Okay, let's be real for a sec. How many times have you found yourself stuck in one of those corporate training sessions?
Yeah.
You know, the ones that feel like they were designed to put you to sleep rather than teach you anything new.
Oh, I've been there, for sure. Death by PowerPoint, they call?
Right. It's like the training equivalent of a lullaby.
Yeah.
But, what if I told you there might be a better way? What if there was a way to actually make learning at work, dare I say, fun?
Okay, now you've got my attention. Fun and work don't usually go together, in my experience.
I hear you. And that's where this platform, BiggieBills, comes in. They're trying to change the game. Literally, it's all about gamified training. And that's what we're diving deep into today.
Gamification, huh? So we're talking about using game mechanics to actually train employees. I'm intrigued.
Exactly. And we've got a ton of interesting stuff to unpack here straight from the source. We've got info directly from BiggieBills themselves, plus podcast interviews with the creator, and even some broader context on that whole employee engagement thing that everyone's talking about.
Right, because if employees aren't engaged, no amount of training, gamified or otherwise, is going to make a difference. So where do we even begin with BiggieBills? What's the big idea?
Well, the core concept is actually pretty brilliant when you think about it. Instead of bombarding employees with information in a super boring way, they've created this dynamic platform that taps into, our natural love for games.
Okay, so far so good. Tell me more about this platform.
So picture this. You're in a virtual boardroom, leading your team in this real-time competition. And we're not talking about some cheesy afterthought game here. This is designed to be seriously engaging with instant feedback that keeps everyone on their toes.
Okay, now that sounds like a far cry from the typical training seminar, but I have to ask, how do they ensure it's not just all fun and games? How do we know people are actually learning and retaining the information?
That's where the magic happens. And honestly, it's one of the things that sets BiggieBills apart. They don't just throw a game at you and call it a day. It's all about the debrief.
Debrief, you mean like a post-game analysis?
You got it. But it's not just a casual, so what did we learn kind of chat. They've actually structured it so that a trained moderator guides the discussion, making those connections between the game you just played and the specific goals of your company.
Now that's smart. So they're taking the excitement of the game and channeling it into actual applicable insights. I like it.
Right. And you know what else is super interesting? They actually hold a patent for this unique approach. Patent number 105128834 if you want to look it up.
A patent? Wow, they must be onto something big if they've gone to those lengths.
It seems like they've cracked the code on making learning both fun and effective. But there's more to it, and this is what I find really fascinating. We dug a little deeper and found out that BiggieBills actually has its roots in academic research.
Really? So it's not just some tech company trying to cash in on the latest trends. Tell me more.
The creator actually worked on a National Science Foundation grant, exploring how to use gamification for, wait for it, better learning and knowledge retention.
Okay, color me impressed. It sounds like they've really tapped into the science behind how our brains work and how we learn best.
They've figured out how to leverage that natural attraction we have to games and use it to make learning stick. But let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about the fun, the science, but why does any of this really matter in the grand scheme of things? So we've got this platform, BiggieBills, making waves with its fresh take on training. But let's zoom out for a second and talk about the bigger picture here.
You mean the whole employee engagement crisis everyone's been talking about?
Exactly. I mean, have you seen those Gallup poll numbers?
Pretty dismal, right? Something like only 20 to 50% of employees actually feeling engaged at work. It's kind of alarming when you think about it.
It's huge. And it's not just about people being like blah about their jobs. It has real consequences for companies, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about decreased productivity, higher turnover. It's a domino effect. And remember that Wall Street Journal article we talked about?
The one about employees feeling totally out of sync with their bosses?
Yeah, that one. It's like this disconnect between what companies think is important and what employees actually care about. BiggieBills seems to be onto something with this whole gamification thing, tapping into what makes people tick.
It's like they're bridging that gap,
Yeah.
right? Instead of forcing information down people's throats, they're making learning engaging, almost addictive.
And that's the key, isn't it? Engagement. Because if people aren't invested, they're not going to retain information, no matter how brilliant the training program.
It's like trying to water a dead plant,
Yeah.
Waste of time and effort. But with BiggieBills, it's like you're actually making learning fun, almost like a reward in itself.
And that's what's so clever about their approach. They've taken something that's inherently enjoyable, games, and harnessed that power to boost learning outcomes. It's not just about entertainment, it's about making learning stick.
And the fact that they snagged that Stevie Award in 2023 speaks volumes, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Getting that kind of industry recognition is a big deal. It means people are paying attention, seeing the value in what BiggieBills is doing. It's clearly more than just a fad. But okay, let's get down to brass tacks here. We've established that BiggieBills is doing something different, but what specifically makes it stand out? Besides the whole gamification thing, of course.
That's what I'm curious about, too, because, there are a lot of training programs out there claiming to be innovative. But what makes BiggieBills different?
Well, one thing that jumped out at me was their focus on versatility. They really emphasize that this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution.
So no matter what kind of team you're working with, in person, remote, whatever, they've got you covered. That's pretty cool.
It is. And it's not just about adapting to where your team works from, but also how many people you've got. You could have a small team or a huge department, and BiggieBills can flex to fit either one.
That's right. They've thought of pretty much everything. And this is worth repeating. It's not like they've only got one game for one type of training.
Right. That really stood out to me, too. The flexibility they've built in is impressive. I mean, we saw examples of them using it for all kinds of stuff, like leadership training, strategic thinking, even team building exercises. There was even something about using it to make sure everyone's on the same page with company culture.
Yeah. It's like that one tool that can do it all, Yeah. Kind of like a Swiss Army knife for all your training needs.
Yeah.
So anyone listening who's feeling like their training programs are, I don't know, a little stale.
Yeah.
Take note. BiggieBills might be just the thing you need.
Yeah.
If you're an executive who wants to try something new, an HR person who's, trying to boost morale, or even just someone who's curious about this whole gamification thing, it's definitely worth checking out.
Couldn't agree more. And it all comes back to that research we were talking about, right? Like if using games can help people learn better in like university studies and stuff, imagine what it could do for how companies train their employees.
It really makes you wonder, what if this is just the beginning? Like, what if the future of learning at work is actually, enjoyable?
Now, that's an exciting thought. And I think BiggieBills is in a great spot to figure that out. They've tapped into something really powerful here, something that just clicks with how our brains are wired.
Totally. So there you have it. We took a deep dive into this whole BiggieBills thing. And I got to say, it's a really interesting mix of, like, gamification and real science, all geared towards helping businesses tackle this huge challenge of keeping employees engaged. Hopefully you found this helpful, maybe even a little inspiring, and hopefully it gives you something to think about as you navigate the always changing world of corporate training.